The 16-year-old is now charged with murdering 5 people as well as cutting off the thumb of one of the victims in a mass shooting in East St. Louis.
All 5 of those killed from the same family.
Loved ones say the killer is one of their own.
There was a list on Instagram that her and the boyfriend made. So we were aware, we just didn't know when.
5 people from the same family, 3 crime scenes across East St. Louis, 7 people shot, 2 teenage lovers accused, and according to investigators, an Instagram kill list that at least some family members had already seen. What happened that Sunday, the 12th of July, 2026, wasn't the beginning of this tragedy. It was the moment everything that had been quietly building finally came crashing down. Investigations like this take days of research, dozens of sources, and hours of editing to piece together. Crime Deepcut is working toward its first 1,000 subscribers so we can keep producing documentaries like this. If you value thoughtful true crime storytelling built on careful research, consider subscribing. It genuinely helps us tell the next story. Now, before we get to the gun, before the alleged kill list, before investigators began reconstructing 3 separate crime scenes, you need to meet the people at the center of this case. Because they weren't names in a police report. They were a grandmother, parents, children, and siblings spending what should have been another ordinary weekend together before their lives changed forever. The grandmother was 74 years old. She was the matriarch, the center of the family, the one whose house everyone came back to, the address that, for decades, functioned as the family's true north. 74 years is long enough to have watched children become parents, and those parents' children become teenagers. Long enough to have believed she'd be the one someday being cared for, not the one whose death would bring 7 relatives to 3 different crime scenes in a single afternoon. Her daughter Cherie, Aunt Cherie, as the family called her. Every extended family has one relative who is simply always there, not in a dramatic way, in the quiet, structural way that holds a family together between the big occasions. That was Cherie's role, daughter to the matriarch, a kind of second mother to a family used to leaning on both of them. Shania Thompson was 25. Quentin Thompson was 21. Brother and sister, close enough in age to have grown up more like friends. Whatever their 20s were becoming was still becoming. They were killed together, in the same park, in the same vehicle, on the same Sunday afternoon. The brother and sister who didn't come home. Devin May was 20 years old. A cousin. Devin had just finished a painting program. He had completed a summer youth employment program. The kind built specifically to give young people in East St. Louis a path toward stable work. A community organizer who ran the program described watching Devin graduate from it, the pride in the room, the sense that a 20-year-old who could have gone a dozen directions had chosen to show up and finish something. 20 years old, and by every account available, still building. 5 people. A grandmother who held 4 generations together. A daughter who never stopped showing up. A brother and sister whose 20s were still unwritten. A cousin who had just proven he could finish what he started. Not statistics, not victims in a court filing, a family, on an ordinary Sunday morning before anyone knew what afternoon it was going to become. And every one of them had seen their name on an Instagram list before that Sunday came. Here is the question this story keeps returning to, because there is no clean answer to it. How does a family live inside that knowledge? Their own names posted publicly by 2 teenagers they knew personally. How do you go on having a normal Sunday when you already know your name is on a list like that? There is no way to answer that from the outside, but it is the emotional center of everything that follows. On Sunday, July 6, 2026, the shooting did not happen in one place. It happened in 3, Jones Park, the first location. According to Lamarian Smiley, who described the sequence from the hospital where his wife was recovering, the couple brought family members to Jones Park and opened fire inside a vehicle. Quentin Thompson, 21, and Shania Thompson, 25, were killed. Tiffany Smiley was hit 4 times. Santasha Scott was shot in the face, 2 people killed, 2 people fighting for their lives, 1 park, 1 vehicle. It's worth pausing on this. A public park is a place families go because it's ordinary, because nothing is supposed to happen there. Whatever warning signs existed before that Sunday, this was not where this family expected the threat to arrive. 39th and Summit, the second location. Devin May, the 20-year-old cousin who had just finished the painting program, was killed here. The circumstances of his death at this location have not been described in as much detail as the Jones Park shooting. What is known? He was targeted and he did not survive. Samuel Gomper's homes, the third location. The grandmother, 74 years old, and Aunt Cherie were killed here. This is a public housing complex in East St. Louis. The matriarch of the family and her daughter killed in the community where they lived, in the place that was supposed to be home. 3 locations, 5 dead, 2 survivors. One Sunday afternoon. The couple did not stop after the first location. They went to the second, then the third. This was not an explosion of violence in a single moment. This was a sequence. Planned. Executed across multiple sites across a city. That word, sequence, is worth sitting with. A single act of violence can come from one uncontrolled moment. A sequence, moving location to location, targeting specific people by name, is something else. What connects a 15-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy to 5 dead members of her own family is a relationship that the family would not allow. Jameer Davis, 16 years old, had previously been involved in an incident involving a stolen gun. Because of that, the family would not allow Davis to stay in the house. He was, in Lamarian Smiley's words, put out. Pastor Mary Young, who knew the family, confirmed the dynamic. The family would not permit the couple to stay together. The couple's response, according to Lamarian, they wanted to eliminate everybody that had a problem with the situation. Family conflict over a disapproved relationship is one of the most ordinary things in the world. It happens in some form in most families, and it almost never ends in anything more than a difficult holiday. The question this case forces is what has to happen for 2 teenagers to move from resenting that objection to deciding the people making it shouldn't be alive to make it anymore. And then the list appeared on Instagram, their names, the family's names posted by the couple, a documented public announcement of who they intended to target. The family saw it. Lamarian confirmed.
There was a list on Instagram that her and the boyfriend made. So we were aware. We just didn't know when.
They just didn't know when. That is the gap this family lived inside, aware of the threat, unable to stop it, waiting for a day that came on July 6th. When both teenagers face adult court, when sentencing begins, Crime Deepcut follows this case. Subscribe so you are here. The gun used in the shooting was not purchased on the street. It was not acquired from an outside source. It belonged to the 15-year-old girl's own mother. The mother kept it in a lockbox. Secured, responsible storage. Her daughter, the 15-year-old, took the keys from her mother's purse. She opened the lockbox, she took the firearm, and then, before a single shot was fired, the police were notified. The family reported the stolen gun to law enforcement as soon as they discovered it was missing. Before anyone was standing over anyone with a gun pointed at their head, the police already knew the weapon was gone. Every safeguard that's supposed to prevent something like this existed here. A lockbox, a key kept separately, a family that reported the theft the moment they discovered it. Every step was taken correctly, and it still wasn't fast enough. This isn't a story about negligence. It's a story about how little time a family can have even when they do everything right. By the time that notification was made, the couple was already somewhere in East St. Louis with the family's address. A stolen weapon charge has been filed. A charge for hijacking and taking a vehicle has also been filed. Jameer Davis faces 12 felony charges in total. 2 people from the family survived. Lamarian Smiley's wife, Tiffany, was hit 4 times in Jones Park. He described it from the hospital. They took them to Jones Park and they fired off in the vehicle. Hitting my wife 4 times, killing Quentin and Shania Thompson, and shooting my auntie in the face. Then he said something about the moment when his wife was still on the ground. She stood over my wife, trying to kill her. But they had no more bullets. The only reason Tiffany Smiley is alive is that the teenagers had run out of ammunition. They stood over her with the gun. They tried. There was nothing left to fire. Her cousin Santasha Scott was shot in the face and survived. 2 people from a family of 7 targeted that Sunday. 5 died. 2 survived, and both of them carry what happened to them into the rest of their lives. Among the charges filed against Jameer Davis: dismembering a human body. Court records say the grandmother's thumb was cut off. Investigators noted that in extreme cases, the fingers of deceased individuals are sometimes used to access locked iPhones. The court record does not confirm that was the motive here. The charges filed. It is one of 12 felony counts. Jameer Davis, 16 years old, is being charged as an adult. 12 felony counts. First-degree murder for each of the 5 killed. Attempted murder for Tiffany and Santasha. Dismembering a human body. Stealing a weapon. Taking a vehicle. The 15-year-old girlfriend has not been named publicly due to her age. Prosecutors are requesting that her case also be moved to adult court. Illinois lawmakers are working to cover the Thompson family's funeral costs under the Crimes of Victims Act. 5 funerals for one family. In East St. Louis, a community is trying to begin healing. A community event has been scheduled, free to the public, at Samuel Gomper's homes, one of the 3 locations where family members were killed. Mental health therapists, support organizations, business owners, community leaders. Mental health is a serious thing. This is crazy. When both teenagers face adult court, when sentencing begins, Crime Deepcut follows this case. Subscribe. Lamarian Smiley is visiting a hospital. His wife was hit 4 times. She is alive because a gun ran out of bullets while someone was standing over her. 5 other people from his family are not alive for any reason. A grandmother who held 4 generations together. A daughter who never stopped showing up. A brother and sister whose 20s were still unwritten. A cousin who had just proven he could finish what he started. Their family knew the list existed. They had seen it. Posted online with their names on it by 2 teenagers who had decided that being together mattered more than the lives of everyone who disagreed. Go back to the beginning of this story, to the words Lamarian Smiley said from that hospital room. "We were aware, we just didn't know when." That is the sentence this entire case lives inside. Not, "we didn't know." Not, "there was no warning." They knew. They saw the list. They reported the gun. They did the things a family is supposed to do when it's afraid, and it still wasn't enough to buy them more than a normal Sunday morning before an afternoon that ended with 3 crime scenes and 5 funerals. The family was aware. They just didn't know when. Now they know.